Well, we are very fired up about this panel, and you guys are going to be stomping your feet and, just leaving with incredible excitement after we're done. First, I have to get my notes out here. So I'm Hans Morris. I work at Nyca Partners. We're a venture capital firm, does fintech, do a lot of enterprise fintech. And we have three very expert people here. So first of all, I'll go with Wei Xu, who is Vice President of Product and Solutions at Visa, and works on new and emerging consumer payment ideas, and her team oversees market research, solution prototypes, figuring out all the problems, and things like authentication, buy now, pay later, e-commerce, and fraud prevention. Before Visa, she did the similar role at American Express. And let's see, Ren Zhang is VP and Global Head of Product AI at PayPal, which means connecting AI strategy across all the PayPal products. But her background is quite remarkable. She was Global Head of Industry Agentic Solutions at Accenture. And before that, at Amazon, she was in charge of personalized shopping experiences and built some of the foundation behavior models. And she held senior jobs in risk and data at several global financial institutions, including she was chief data scientist at BMO. She was at Prudential, Commonwealth Bank of Australia, and American Express. And she is Dr. Zhang. She has a PhD in statistics from Wharton, and she really knows what she's talking about, as does Sharda. I've known Sharda for many, many years. She's chief legal and business officer at Catena Labs, which is a brand new, probably haven't heard of it, but it's a brand new regulated financial institution which is purpose-built for stablecoins and agentic commerce. She is in charge of the legal compliance and business architecture. For over 20 years, she was pretty much at the center of, I'd say, a lot of what we now call fintech. She was at Wells Fargo. She was also chief general counsel at a firm. She was head of payments at Airbnb. She was at Square and PayPal. And she figured out a lot of complicated things like how Pay in 4 could actually work, and Airbnb's expansion into Cuba, which is a noteworthy achievement. So with this panel close at hand, we have a couple of things we want to talk about. So everyone here knows about agentic commerce. And what exactly is it, though? And will it meet the objectives of both consumers and businesses and make everyone operate both safely and securely in an AI-enabled commerce environment? So, for example, let's imagine a world, which is basically what you've been hearing about. The world is where a consumer or a business could have an agent do their shopping, make the very best choices, get the best prices, optimize for cost, quality, and convenience, with or without credit, knowing that they have complete security, it fits their tastes, and all their other objectives, which sounds great. And then businesses, on the other hand, would have zero CAC. They would have guaranteed authentication. They'd have no card-not-present fraud. They'd have fewer chargebacks, lower cost settlement. It's an entirely new type of commerce, which also sounds great. So there's a word in German called Weltschmerz. Does anyone know Weltschmerz? Which it means it's the melancholy feeling you have comparing an ideal world to the real one. So all of you, what we want to do is drag you through your own Weltschmerz this afternoon, but also at the end leave you a little bit hopeful that if we play our cards right, this could evolve in a way that could be interesting. But that's the key thing. Do we play our cards right? And that's what we're going to explore at this panel. So what we need is, I think we've all of us agree, the first thing we need is standards. And what are standards exactly, and what are those going to look like, and how could standards importantly incorporate trust and fairness, things which maybe standards don't always do. And so Sharda, why don't you explain what would standards look like? What do they need to, at a minimum, incorporate, and then what might they evolve to incorporate?
Thanks, Hans. So for the regulators in the room, just a quick correction. Catena Labs is not currently a regulated entity, but that's a future state.
It's like a Weltschmerz.
Yeah, it's a Weltschmerz. That's exactly right. But at Catena, we do have the thesis that agents are going to be a critical part of the economic infrastructure of the global, of global commerce. And so with that context, we definitely believe that standards are necessary, and we believe that those standards need to be interoperable in order to truly be effective. If I think about a commercial transaction where I'm using an agent, for example, I communicate my preferences to an agent, the agent communicates to another agent that perhaps is the seller's agent, and then confirms that what it is that I want to purchase is in fact available to me, and then consummates a payment transaction on my behalf. In order for that to happen, as everybody in this room knows, that transaction has to then go through a series of other partners, right? It has to go through an acquiring bank, it has to go up to a network, it has to go to an issuing bank, and to a merchant. And so the commercial transaction has to be supported by a financial transaction that has to touch many different potential players. In order for that to happen, I believe these standards need to contain certain essential elements, right? So, are they secure? How do you define security of an agent? Is it safe from cyber risk? Is it safe from malicious actors and activities? So, what does that look like in an agent? Privacy. How is the agent protecting the privacy of the consumer? So as I give it my information, is that information going to be stored in a manner that is consistent with the legal requirements, whether at a state level or if it's in a different country, at whatever level is appropriate. So the standards around privacy, I think, are going to be really important. Accountability. So who's actually accountable if that agent does something wrong? If it hallucinates, if it misunderstands my instruction, if the seller's agent misunderstands an instruction, if something goes wrong in that whole ecosystem, in that loop, what does that accountability look like, and how do we confer, how do we negotiate that accountability between these agents and between ourselves and those agents? Predictability or reliability, like one and the same essentially, but is the agent reliable? Is it consistently performing the expected services? Is it being tested to do so? Is it being monitored? I think that's another standard, and then maybe I'll close out with transparency, which is, can you see what the agent is doing? Is there reporting? Is there receipts? Is there record keeping? And does the user in fact understand? So I think for this whole ecosystem to work cleanly, and I think there's more there, Hans, but I think for the ecosystem to actually operate, each player in it needs to be able to look to all the agents and all the other players and say, we agree that these standards are in fact moving with this agent, and we can trust that credential. We can believe that when this particular agent that presents this particular credential, it signifies these standards are in place, and we can engage.
And I think we could say that global commerce of e-commerce effectively relies on standards set by Visa and MasterCard as a basic entity. And when I was at Visa, I think we had about 40,000 pages of rules. I don't know what it is now, but so there's lots of rules that make those standards work in every jurisdiction. But would you be willing to go through, because Visa announced Visa Intelligent Commerce a couple of months ago, and what are the 4 or 5 different standards out there, and how close do they come to the ideal world?
Yes, of course. So, Sharda, thank you for the wonderful description of the multiple parties in the payments ecosystem that need to be involved for there to be trusted commerce today in the card not present, the e-commerce world. So to your question, Hans, within the past few months, Google announced their agentic payments protocol. OpenAI, similar, they announced their trusted agent protocol, as did Visa and MasterCard. Mm-hmm. So let's start with what's similar across all of these protocols, right? Because I think the first thing that we believe is that they all are trying to do the same thing, which is that we are acknowledging that agentic commerce is coming, right? In many places it's arrived already, and there's a need for agents to be able to be sharing information with both merchants, so the merchants can distinguish between good agents and bots who are perhaps doing malicious activities, and also for information about who those agents are to be percolated through the payments ecosystem to issuers, to the issuer bank, right? And so that we can continue to safeguard transactions. Speaking very broadly, the differences between these protocols is really, are these protocols in some cases going to require additional lift for merchants, right? So in the case of OpenAI, for example, there are going to be connections that OpenAI is suggesting that merchants do directly with them to share information about everything from what the merchant is doing to also kind of OpenAI. And of course, the OpenAI protocol is very focused on ChatGPT as the first kind of agent use case, though it also contemplates supporting additional agents. Speaking broadly about what Visa and MasterCard announced, Visa's intelligent commerce protocol contemplates using existing web infrastructure. So the idea is that we also believe that there needs to be a way for agents to be able to communicate to merchants that they are a certain agent, right? I'm a ChatGPT, I'm a Perplexity, I'm one of the kind of plethora of retail shopping agents that are being developed right now that we don't know of yet today. And the idea is that we're looking to use existing web headers, web protocols, so that merchants have to do less work in recognizing them, which we believe is particularly important for smaller merchants who don't necessarily have the infrastructure and the ability to be able to kind of tackle agentic commerce by themselves. Moving quickly to the other side of the ecosystem, I believe there are a lot of financial institutions who are in attendance today. It's equally important for financial institutions who have the safeguards. They're the ones who are issuing credentials, who are holding customers' credit and debit and checking accounts, to be aware of who those agents are. So Visa's Intelligent Commerce Protocol also contemplates sharing information about who the agent is over to issuers, and also sharing kind of high-level customer intent information so that we know that not just the customer wanted to transact with a particular merchant, but that they had actually demonstrated an intent to say, I wanted to buy a pair of blue shoes at an agent at a certain price point.
But does anyone authenticate that agent? Does the bank have to authenticate and certify that agent?
Yes, absolutely. So speaking specifically about Visa's Intelligent Commerce program, we are baking into the Intelligent Commerce program protocols and technologies that we use already. So on the topic of authentication, we're introducing payment passkeys, which is really based on FIDO standards. So this is the idea of using your biometric or any other mechanism you have to unlock your devices today to say, yes, Hui chose to both engage with this agent, and she also chose to make this purchase, to your question about authentication. And that information is shared also with issuers. And then I think just one more point is that we also believe there's a place to be had about recognizing and registering agents, capturing consumer consent, and establishing protocols around what does it mean to capture customer consent. What are kind of the bare minimum elements that you need to have in an agentic experience so that you make sure that customer intent and kind of customer choice is preserved.
So, all right, so Ren, how is that going to, how would PayPal see that working? I'm a PayPal customer. I want something that reflects my behavior, my interests. How is it going to be personalized? How will you make that happen?
Well, first of all, thank you for being a PayPal customer.
I'm
Appreciate
very happy.
it. Yes. So PayPal absolutely is in this kind of ecosystem, and agentic transformation is one of the vision we are pushing. PayPal probably is recognized as a payment company, but we do see that as time goes on, where we are uniquely positioned to transform not only the payment, but also commerce, bring payment and commerce all together. We have a deep knowledge of the merchant and also from the customer. Now, while you're talking about personalization, that is a key, is truly the understanding of it. When I think about, bring the best experience, agentic is a way to allow us to provide intuitive interaction. But the key thing, again, when it comes to agent is that LLM is a brain of it, and based on interaction with the customer and deep knowledge extract from whatever experience they have, we would be able to decipher not only getting the explicit preference the customer have, but also implicit ones. And the key is that give the customer the choice and make sure that the experience is really personal for them. And from the customer lens, what they want is that I need effortless procedure. I should almost having the conversation without lifting a finger, the future state you described. Now, how do you achieve that? Is this kind of a deep personalization? And I also want to add, while there's almost a, how to say, a magical glow from the agent. I do want to mention agent does not, in a sense, work along just with LLM. The traditional AI, all those kind of deep understanding of the customer, right? What we're already doing, use deep learning, neural network, all those kind of things, will still play a very important role to collaborate with agent. The key of agent is that it has a kind of intuitive interaction layer, but it also, agent has a way to take actions. It's almost given hands to the LLM. LLM is intelligence, and what the hands will do, the hands is going to grab all those kind of data that give you the deep intelligence of the customer. It will grab all those kind of machine learning model or existing tool, in this case, like the checkout process, all those kind of safeguards we already have to prevent fraud checks, to bring kind of confidence and trust in this whole process, to ensure we have a personalized but kind of trusted experience. I think for the customer, when they're talking about personalization, it's relevance, but also it's a trust, right? Trust you remember what I told you. Either I told you or what my behavior has been mentioned to you. Trust my information is safe. Trust this whole process is going to be seamless. So that's what we are driving in this whole agentic transformation process, starting with consumer, but it's going to go to merchant as well. It's truly this kind of ecosystem. And one thing I also kind of echo what the panelists talking about, a little bit different from many of the other transformations you see with this kind of agent. If you truly want to have this kind of end-to-end automation, you really need to talk about interoperability. Right. And that means that it's not only about just PayPal anymore in this example. It is this ecosystem, because the whole shopping journey, PayPal itself will not be able to facilitate. So how do you create a system, not only you offer a personalized experience for the customer on your own platform, but you're able to stitch all of the other systems and be able to have this kind of multi-agent
So
platform?
let me interrupt here a little
Sure.
bit just to probe on this. So when you say that, so if I'm a PayPal customer, you're going to offer me my own agent, and I'll be able to select multiple settlement types. I can settle into my PayPal wallet, or I can settle into debit card, or I can settle into any type of settlement. And you'll travel, I can use that anywhere, or just where PayPal has merchant relationships? And will you tell me that's a bad idea to, like, this merchant here is too risky, you shouldn't, like if I'm buying a cruise ship in Hanoi trip, and you say this cruise ship is very shaky, you should not pay them money for a trip in 6 weeks because they may not be there. Are you really going to be acting in my interest or not? Or how's that going? Or have you not figured that out yet?
We definitely will act as the best of customers' interest. I would say that's something already PayPal is doing. If you're thinking about PayPal's brand, where we differentiate our value, is we bring those kind of extra layer of safety when it comes to fraud, when it comes to protection to the customer value, and also to merchant as well, right? Now, in this agentic world, I would say expectation will be more than what we already do.
And are you going to authenticate to the merchant? You're going to KYC me and say this is a legitimate person who is not a terrorist and not any other bad things, or not?
I would say we play a significant role. I don't think of PayPal alone, because there you have issuer bank and all those kind of in this whole network.
So you're going to rely on the issuer bank to.
And we're
so
going to play
they're
an
going to see.
role.
Do you see that as the KYC is going to be the bank? The issuer will do the KYC.
For the customer?
Yeah, for a consumer.
The user, the consumer who's making the transaction, yes. So short answer, yes. I think we need to leverage the existing infrastructure that's in place today. KYC is not perfect, but it has, I mean, you know.
I've never heard that KYC is not perfect. Has anyone else here heard that before? What about KYC of the merchant? Who's going to say this is a legitimate merchant and has been here? Are you going to say this is a merchant that we have a high level of confidence in, or they just got a merchant account and there's risk there?
I mean, I think both sides of the equation really are going to be vetted, as they are today, by the financial institution, right? Because the value exchange is going to happen at the financial institution level. So when you're buying your amazing yacht, Hans, please don't forget to invite me. the
It
exchange
needs a
of
lot of work, by the way, so you're going to come.
the exchange of money is going to happen by the financial institution, right? So when we think about agent identity, really, at least in my mind, what we're talking about, KYA is KYC or KYB, and then how do we take the knowledge that we have of the customer, the consumer's identity or the business's identity, and then effectively confer it to an agent and allow it to pass with that agent securely in a manner that can be trusted.
And who's going to say all this meets the jurisdictional fairness and other consumer protection laws in that jurisdiction? Who's going to do that?
In terms of, well, the KYC, the standards for the individual and the business will remain the same, right? So you would still collect the same name, address, date of birth, social security number. You would still get the EIN, articles of incorporation, ultimate beneficial owners. I mean, you'd still collect the same data. I think the question, and this comes back to standards, is how does that data then get shared with an agent, and how does the agent carry that, and how do you maintain it in a way that's private? And do you need to go back to the bank every time it's being used to authenticate, or to the issuing agency, whether it's a DMV or somebody else, like the verified credential notion? I think that's still up in the air,
So
like what that's going to look
so
like.
I think you could imagine, I think all of you could, so suppose, because to me one thing that is very interesting, which is I think the next step I'll talk about is how does trust evolve in a better way using agentic commerce? Because if we were talking about this example before, we had a company, Yofi, that just got sold, but it was a really interesting, it helped, as soon as you entered the site, it would start evaluating you as a customer and whether you're going to abuse returns policies, and whether you're a crook, like arbitraging sneaker prices, or actually truly a criminal gang doing that, or just a bad customer. Is that the type of information, I mean, if I'm the merchant, I'd like to know that this agent is a bad customer. Who's going to keep track of that? And who's also going to do a better job in reviews, have many weaknesses? How could you say, we're going to start sharing information that's not available on the internet, SKU data, information about my credit profile, my willingness to buy something based upon credit interests that I have, good and bad data. If you had trust, you can start sharing that. How's that going to work? And is that no one knows, or you have a plan? What do you think?
So, sorry, no, you go ahead. No, go ahead. I think one of the benefits of agents carrying those credentials in just even outside of commerce specifically is that I think we're going to be able to limit the amount of data that's shared, right? So if I have an agent, and I mean, this is kind of a broad issue, right? Are agents going to be limited to various different tasks? Am I going to have an agent that I use for commerce versus an agent I use for something else? And what's the authority, and kind of how do I deploy them? But imagine a world where you have to show your driver's license, and really the only thing that the person needs is your name or your date of birth, not your address, right? I think in an agentic world, you wouldn't have to produce your whole driver's license. You would just provide the information, or the agent would provide only that information which is necessary for the transaction. So I think that there are some potential real benefits there. I'm going to let you take the commercial behavior aspect of that.
Yeah, I mean, visually, the way I'm thinking about this, right, is what's difficult but exciting about all this is that there is this new entity that's an agent that is now both interfacing with merchants, interfacing with customers, right, and like kind of the banks are behind the customers. So I think to your question, Hans, yes, I mean, I think in order to facilitate both good experiences, right? And like I agree with you, Sharda, good could mean a lot of different ways. I do see a world where we have multiple types of agents conducting multiple tasks for us, right? Some that we interact with every day, the likes of the ChatGPTs, but some for whom we were going to use to conduct bespoke tasks. And yes, I think to be able to streamline the information sharing, there needs to be a way, like Visa has a protocol, right? Like Google, like OpenAI. These are all complementary protocols at the philosophical level, and I do believe that there's a technical way for them to continue working together. There needs to be a way for agents to be able to seek consumer permissions, right? To say, I am who I am, I want to share my information, with a merchant who I interact with already, right? So that I'm not just a nameless customer of the merchant. If I were logged into my merchant website, I would receive personalized recommendations already. They know my preferences. The agentic experience can only become superior if that information can be shared. Via Visa's agentic protocol, we've kind of talked about ways that that can be shared between agents and merchants, and I think that's the overall goal.
Yeah, and I think that to me this is very, and you could imagine like small businesses, for example, where credit can be essential. My willingness to share detailed credit insights would vary based upon trust. If I went there and there was like a marketplace for credit, for example, if there was an authentication of all that, but I didn't necessarily have to share it with share it on the internet or even share it with a merchant who's not necessarily a great actor, that's valuable. That doesn't exist in today's technology, that doesn't exist anywhere, but you could imagine that being an interesting application of this.
Absolutely. If I can jump on the small business reference you just made, I think we've talked a lot about consumer-driven agentic interactions. But if you just think about the way that agentic payments can be favorable to small businesses, right? So small businesses, oftentimes, they have to pay invoices. They have to pay all these payers in ways that are time-consuming. And I think when we talk about consumer-driven payments, there's an idea or hypothesis that there's a lot of product discovery that needs to be made out there. Whereas if I'm a small business, you might have just known payers for whom you can use agents to automate payments, or you have a very specific idea of what you're looking to purchase already, right? And you're just looking to use these agents to be able to find the kind of least cost, whatever your search parameters are. So I think your point about small businesses, both from a credit perspective and also like just helping small businesses streamline operations is extremely valid.
Yeah, and it can also help, I mean, like fulfillment of an invoice with multiple partners, and you have a single invoice. It could be, you could imagine lots of things that it could automate, which today are a big pain in the neck.
If I may add to that kind of share information, I think the willingness to share additional information allow that flow come with two requirements. One is that the trust, we've said a lot, so they need to feel it's safe. Another one important is feel value getting in return. I think that's absolutely critical. From merchant side, especially from the small merchant, I would say if you think about it, even though we talk a lot about AI, since giving people more advantage, but in reality, for small and medium business, they actually sometimes can be at disadvantage because this requires special talent, require additional investment, and they may not be at a position to be able to offer that. If we provide this kind of agentic system, allow them actually to get advantage of that even without having investment, right? Those kind of potential white label service, merchant would want to share information. So they feel they're getting value in return. Of course, you also need to prove that this ecosystem you're talking about having all those kind of safeguard to ensure the security as well.
Do we think that as we're putting ourselves in the merchants' shoes for this part of the discussion, would you see, I mean, merchants complain a lot about not having the flexibility on settlement types and rules, and often they complain about chargeback rules, but also speed, and they would say more certainty of completion of the transaction if you settle into local debit or into wallets or UPI or whatever you may have dozens of alternatives. Whether stable coins actually become a critical part of this or not is also, I think, another question. But does Visa or PayPal or everybody else, Stripe has said that they would be settlement agnostic. Is Visa going to be settlement agnostic, or are you going to say, look, we're going to set rules regardless of what the settlement system is, or are you saying no, it has to be on your existing rails?
The way that we're launching our agentic protocol today, it's card first. We are very much, and I think this goes beyond even agentic commerce, we are very much contemplating supporting fiat-based currencies, right? Just the ability to settle. And I would imagine that, if the market, right, kind of we believe that ecosystem supports it, that's something that we are continuing to evaluate.
But I want to settle into UPI. Can you do that, or would you support that?
Settlement, you're talking about the India?
Yeah. Maybe.
Maybe, but I think we would
Those of you in the
evaluate
press,
it outside.
that's a maybe
of-
that you just heard. Okay. No.
We would evaluate it outside of agentic. I think it's
Yes.
much broader.
All right. Now, how do we think chargebacks evolve in this type of environment that we just talked about? Because I think, I don't know, it could get a lot more complicated. And do you think we're also going to start out with human in the loop, actual, like, approve, click, or otherwise I didn't do that, my agent did it? Because first-party fraud, big type of fraud, and I could say agentic first-party, I have no idea what this stupid agent did. It's a bunch of algorithms, I don't understand it.
Transparency, remember, one of the standards. I mean, I tend to be an optimist, so I'll be really curious to hear what both Ren and Wei say in this regard. But I think that the rules are going to have to evolve to address agentic commerce. It's, just like when we moved from brick and mortar to e-commerce to, now as we move into agentic, we have to take account of the new ecosystem, the potential risks that are present in it. So I think that's just like threshold baseline.
But here's one thing, it doesn't. So I know a lot about this in the history of card not present fraud, which started with ticket sales in the 70s and catalog sales, lots of fraud. But then you say, okay, card not present, but I got your phone, I got way more variables. It's not the same, but you can't change those rules once they're in place. So when you say it needs to evolve, I don't know. I think it's hard to evolve rules in a big complex network because someone gets injured by any change in rules.
So my recommendation would be that the rules evolve, but let's just assume that the rules can't evolve, right? Then I think it goes back to what is the behavior that's happening between the different constituents in a specific transaction. The way I look at it is as long as the consumer can communicate its preferences clearly to an agent, that the agent can ingest its requirements and hold them and act upon them without hallucinating or making any errors. And that continues, that accuracy kind of continues to the point where what the merchant is describing is in fact accurate, right? I think that's going to be one of the big challenges is the inventory that the merchants keep, how they inventory, how they describe their products and services is now going to be recorded in a chain of a transaction. And so as long as that's accurate, and so I say, let's use the blue shoes example, I want a pair of blue shoes for $50 in 2 days, and I communicated, it clears, the merchant sends me what was described as blue shoes, but they're purple. Well, I think I have a SNAD claim, and I'm going to return it, right? Even if, I could just return it, but let's just say that's a bad example. Sorry, but I think that some of those claims should, in my mind, subside so long as the data elements meet.
All right,
that's that's my perspective.
We only have 2 minutes and 18 seconds left, 16 seconds, 15, 14. So what is each of you, what is one non-obvious either risk or benefit that you see emerging from this in the next couple of years? And do you want to start with?
Yes, sure. I'm an optimist as well about this. I do think that agentic commerce is going to democratize our ability to be able to access services and products. And when I talk about democratize, we were talking about this backstage a little bit. What I mean about that is I think there are just underserved populations right now who are not getting the products and services that they need because they're not as able to access technology, right? I think about parents, like others, who just do not use Google when we were doing search-based. So I believe in agentic commerce's ability to democratize.
Okay, Ren?
Yeah, I cannot touch.
One of you has to be very cynical here, by the way, but go ahead.
That's you.
Yeah, it's me.
Yes.
Yeah. I want to I kind of touched a little bit earlier. I think we talk about consumer experience a lot, but I really want to talk about, in a sense, from the business side. I kind of mentioned a little bit, I truly believe AI sometimes will put the small business at disadvantage, and how we make it happen for them so that we have a leveled competition playground is going to be absolutely critical. I mean, that's where PayPal, when we push in this agentic commerce transformation, we put that focus a lot. We believe that if we create those kind of agentic commerce way to bring small business, give them more access. For small business, the key is about access. Access to those kind of network, access to the consumers, which may not be very visible. But through the partnership with hyperscalers, through bringing them their catalog to our platform, make it visible to the customers through the personalization, we give them a very good chance. That's where I feel is going to be optimal. Can we get there quickly? I don't know. That's what we're trying. Hopefully, we can be successful.
Okay, Sharda, last word.
So I'm going to just stick with the optimism. Sorry, Hans. But look, I think that we've talked a lot about model risk management and some of the risks associated with models, but I believe that we can really leverage AI to eradicate some of the issues that we have faced in financial services historically. And so I'm really excited. Part of the reason I'm really excited to be at Catena, where we're trying to build an AI native bank from the ground up, is I hope that we can address issues of implicit bias. I hope that we can address issues of elder abuse. I hope that we can address some of the concerns that we've had kind of systematically in the past because we're building from the ground up. So I'm very optimistic about the future of agentic financial services.
So there it is, everyone. You had your Weltschmerz, and now you have your optimism. So thank you all for paying attention. Thanks.